Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Today is the Day Changemakers. I am Jody Grinwald. This week, my guest is Mark Valli, Chief Executive Officer of Norwescap. Norwescap provides services to those in need in Hunterdon, Warren, Sussex, Somerset, and Morris counties in New Jersey. They focus on a wide portfolio of needs, including education, employment, financial empowerment, healthy nutrition, housing, and civic engagement. This organization gives so much to so many, and their story is truly incredible. Side note, Mark also shares a little about his passion for music and his rock star band days. He now sees some commonalities between being in a band and management. You do not want to miss this great conversation. Thank you to Mark for being a guest on the show. Please like, subscribe, and share via the YouTube channel or download on all popular streaming sites. You just never know who may need to connect to the messages that my guests share. Have a fabulous week, everyone. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Today is the Day Changemakers. And I'm always so excited to have a changemaker sitting across from me on this Zoom. And today is no different at all, but I'm going to read a little of his bio because he has so much great information to share here. So Mark Valli is the CEO of Norwescap, a nonprofit organization serving over 30,000 individuals and families annually in Northwest New Jersey. 30,000. That's just incredible. Before joining Norwescap, he served as CEO for the Community Charter School of Paterson, serving over 900 students K through 8. And Paterson, for those who don't know, is the state's third largest city and one of the most underprivileged parts of the state. Previously, Mark was founding president and CEO of New Jersey After 3, serving over 75,000 students in 120 schools. Over his career, Mr. Valli has served as Vice President of New Jersey Community Development Corporation, a founding staff person with the New Jersey Commission on National and Community Service, worked in a firm that specialized in facilities management, and served in the governor's office under Governor Jim Florio. Also, in 2007, Mark was recognized by NJ Biz Magazine as one of New Jersey's top 40 under 40. Mark, I think you have a prop there with you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think you have a prop there with you to kind of show us, which I would love to see and show everybody for those who are watching the YouTube channel.
I do, but the depressing thing is I'm well beyond the 40 under 40 stage at this point, but this was the cover, and the goofy guy with the Stratocaster, the red Stratocaster guitar, is none other than yours truly.
That's incredible, and I totally want to get to the guitar. But before we do, I just want to welcome you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. And as we were talking right before we got started, Norwescap, I feel bad that I didn't know about Norwescap until, my colleague, my friend, Dawn Doherty, who is with the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. We love working with them with the Zach Gia Plotter Kids Foundation. She introduced us. And I had no idea you existed or what you do, but oh my gosh, you do so many things. So I would love to let you take it from here to really share the mission and the vision behind Norwescap.
Yeah, and thank you for that opportunity. I say a lot that Norwescap really is one of New Jersey's best kept secrets. We're a 55-year-old organization. We were really founded as part of the Johnson era Great Society programs, and we were formed in 1965 in response to the civil rights movement and the anti-poverty movement of the 60s. And so, but we have this reach. I mean, we're in Hunterdon, Warren, Sussex, Somerset, and Morris counties. So we reach 5 counties. And true confession, back when I was working with the state, I thought that, Phillipsburg was near the Delaware Water Gap. So I knew of Norwescap and their good work, but it's something that I think we're trying to work on a lot, which is trying to let people know all the good things that are happening out here in the northwestern part of the state. And the interesting thing about that is 3 of the counties we serve are they're exceptionally wealthy counties: Somerset, Hunterdon, Morris counties, but they have these pockets of poverty, despite the fact that these are wealthy counties. And, so sometimes just getting out the word that this poverty exists, that these people are struggling right here in these beautiful communities, that is another one of our, sort of outreach and communications challenges that we have to face.
And that sounds like a huge challenge, like you said, because people are living in counties or towns that feel very affluent, and yet they don't see what's really going on sometimes behind the scenes. And so share with us some of the programming, the amazing programming that Norwescap provides to the community.
Right. So we're kind of designed as a comprehensive nonprofit organization to address, a wide portfolio of needs that that people might run into in their lives. So we break them down into 6 big buckets. The first is education, and we really are kind of the expert in early childhood education out in this part of the state. So that's our strong focus, but we also do programming for teenagers as well as community college students that are low income to support them as well. But early childhood ed is really our specialty. So we're the Head Start provider, we're the county resource and referral agency in these counties. So it's a big piece of what we do. The second area is employment. So we do a lot of job readiness and job training type programs, helping to move people towards either re-entering the workforce or entering the workforce for the first time. So a lot of programs and supports around that. Financial empowerment's a big one for us, and it's a growing one, because we have programs, everything from matching savings accounts dollar for dollar for low-income families so that they can purchase assets, to filing people's taxes. Believe it or not, in 2019, we brought back $3 million back to our residents here and through tax credits and tax refunds, but a whole series of other programs to help people get control of their finances and become financially independent and self-sufficient. A big area for us is health and nutrition. We provide all kinds of programs, including supplemental nutritional programs for women, infants, and children. We are the food bank that serves 3 counties, so we're one of the 5 food banks in the state, and we serve over 100 nonprofit organizations through that food bank, over 2 million pounds of food a year. Actually, this year, because of COVID, it's about 2.5 million pounds of food.
Wow.
So a lot of work in the health and nutrition area. We also do a lot of work in housing and community development. Everything from homeless prevention programs to literally providing housing for low-income seniors, to investing in small businesses. And I know that's something NJBIA is interested in. We've just in the last 2 months, through a number of programs we've invested over $400,000 right here in small business in Phillipsburg to help those businesses stay open. So it's a big and growing piece of what we do. And then lastly is volunteerism and civic engagement, because you need human beings to do this kind of work. And volunteers help us expand our impact beyond what we can do with paid staff, obviously, but also making sure that our participants, our clients, that they learn how to self-advocate, that they learn how to get the kinds of resources and advocate for the kinds of policies and things that they will need to help them and their families thrive. So it's a lot, but it's those 6 big buckets of programming that Norwescap provides, really to provide a holistic and comprehensive support of services so that people get the supports they need.
How many large is your staff right now?
So we're about 270 people. Our budget's over $17 million. So it's a pretty extensive reach. A big piece of our staffing is Head Start. We run 8 Head Start centers, and that's a big piece of what we do. But it's a big team.
It is a big team, but it's a big job. I mean, as you kept going, I just kept thinking about the amount of work each one of those pillars takes to be able to help the people the right way. And each one is so involved, including a food bank, right? On top of all the other things. Oh my gosh, feeding how many people did you say again?
Well, it's when we tally the people, it's hard for us because a lot of our food pantry partners, they're a small church basement, they're a small childcare center. So and a lot of folks don't necessarily want to be tracked. So a lot of the number of people we serve, we estimate to be over 130,000. But it's hard for us to track how many of those are, unduplicated people. It could be the same person coming back 5 times. But it's a lot of people, and it's 110 different feeding partners that we work with. So 110 different nonprofit organizations that can meet all the standards that we have to meet for the Feeding America guidelines.
So those, it sounds like, these are the programs that you have, whether it's COVID time or not COVID time. Unfortunately, we're in COVID time. What have you had to morph program-wise because of this? I know, right? Very loaded question, isn't it?
Right. I want to, there was a term, I'm going to forget the term, but I don't want to use the term pivot because we've used that. But I mean, COVID has impacted absolutely every operational piece of Norwescap. And in some ways, ironically, it's been for the better. We had just approved our strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years. And we had some big plans for changing how we deliver our services, how we interact with our clients. And COVID made us say, well, 3 to 5 years isn't going to work. We got to get it done now. And so everything from how a client interacts with us. Now a client can go right to our website. There's a shiny red button that says Get Help Now. They can click on there. They fill out a couple of questions, and within 48 hours, they'll get a call from a human being. And we will plug them into all the different kinds of services and programs they may qualify for, whether Norwescap provides it or some other entity. So that was a huge shift for us culturally, because we, over the years, we've evolved in sort of these siloed type of programs. And now we can get you in as a Norwescap participant, and we will connect you to all the different services and programs that you might qualify for. So just organizationally and operationally, that was a huge shift for us. And we had to build the human infrastructure underneath that to be able to support it. So that was no easy task. It took us quite a while, but we now have over 50 people trained in that process. We call them engagement partners, and it's really a case management model. Beyond that, just the day-to-day, and I'll give you one number, which will stick in your head. We had to purchase 187 laptop computers for our staff.
Wow.
First of all, it shows you that we needed to upgrade our computer infrastructure, right? Our IT infrastructure needed to get used anyway. But it also showed you the dramatic shift. We had to move to virtual programming for an organization that really is based on one-on-one relationship building, workshops and seminars that are in person, because it is about that relationship with our participants and clients. But it was a dramatic shift, and many of our programs had to go from what they were normally doing to something completely different. I'll give you 2 examples. One, in Sussex County, our Pathways to Prosperity program is kind of run almost like an Alcoholic Anonymous type of model, where participants get together once a week in a peer sharing model that's facilitated, and they support each other through their personal and professional goals. Well, that all stopped. You can't meet in person. And then this huge need for food assistance grew. And so the people that were the participants in Pathways started volunteering to help deliver meals to other families that were hurting. And I love that story because that's the transformational power of service, right there embodied in how our Pathways to Prosperity program responded. And so for a program that didn't deliver meals, they're now delivering over 400 weekly packages of food to families every week. So that's one example. Another is here in Phillipsburg, our Family Success Center, they do workshops and seminars for parents and families. Again, that couldn't happen. And so we recruited volunteers to actually deliver breakfast and lunch to Phillipsburg kids that qualified for the free and reduced lunch program. And so we served something like 10 or 15,000 meals between March and June to families that needed it. So it's those kinds of, hey, we normally do this, but now we got to do this. And kudos to our team for being innovative, for getting volunteers, and for finding creative ways to get services to people that needed them. But we did. The other example I can give you is our child care resource and referral agency. They are used to providing child care support for very low-income folks. Well, during the height of the pandemic, the real need for child care was emergency service workers and hospital workers. So we had to completely shift our business model overnight, and we did it literally within a week and a half. to be able to meet the needs of doctors, nurses, EMT drivers, all those emergency service personnel, to make sure that we could get them the childcare they needed so that they could be saving lives of folks that were impacted by COVID. So, I mean, everything we did totally shifted. And in some cases, as I mentioned, we're actually now reaching more people than we were before, because a lot of the restrictions from our funders were like, you have to do this in person. For example, the Women, Infants, and Children program, or our Career and Life Transitions program. All of a sudden, those funders got very flexible and they said, meet the needs as you see them. And so we're now able to, because of funding restraints, our job training program, the Career Life and Transition Center, they were only able to meet about 12 people or 8 to 10 people in any given setting, because we have these really small facilities. Now we're having 25 and 30 participants in all these workshops and seminars, because anybody can show up anytime online. And now it's all recorded so people can access it from the internet. And it's allowed us to expand our impact. And the same with WIC. I mean, we got so far ahead of our caseload with the WIC program, because we could call people at home, we could schedule Zoom meetings for the counseling piece of it, that we were literally like 3 weeks ahead of our case management schedule. So it just goes to show you that the challenges that COVID presented us forced us to get creative and frankly, to make some improvements in how we operate and how we deliver services. And I think deliver services better for people in need.
It really, that's such a great, so many great examples of flexibility within a framework, right? I mean, you had the framework, but you had to be extremely flexible at the onset. So how quickly did you, and I'm not using the word pivot because I feel the same way as you. I've been using the word morph. I've been trying to find unique words, anything but pivot. How quickly do you feel like you were able to make those changes? It sounds like a lot of changes.
I mean, literally, a lot of what I just described happened, in a week or two. In some cases, it took a little longer because people had to figure out how they were going to, we had to get laptops and deliver them. And they had to figure out how they were going to deliver their workshops online. But a lot of it happened within a couple of weeks. And we've sustained it. We've been able to sustain it. So it really didn't take a long time at all.
So how do people who are in need find you?
So that goes back to the problem that we're not as well known as we should be. So the other thing that we were already in the process of doing prior to COVID was building our social media infrastructure. We really had zero social media presence. I mean, there was a Facebook page, but I think when I came on board, there was 3 comments on it, and it was like 20 people who signed up for it. There hadn't been a post in over a year, maybe 2 years. So we reimagined our whole social media presence, and that really helped. That helped us get a lot of information out quickly. And one of the things we added was a YouTube channel, which was easy to do, didn't cost anything. And at the height of the pandemic, when people were scared to go out, scared to get information, we were posting information in English and Spanish, and dramatically expanded the number of people we were reaching. We got something like 9,000 views, which we didn't even have a YouTube channel before COVID. But having that information out there in English and Spanish from, not from me, not from the highfalutin folks in the central office, but from our frontline people, I think really made a difference. And again, it's about that relationship building with the clients and the participants, so that they know that these are people that they trust, that they work with, that they see on a day-to-day basis, that speak their language. And it really helped us reach a lot of folks. But it's a work in progress. I mean, we serve 30,000 people a year. We should have a much bigger internet presence than we do right now. And we're actively working on that. We're building a strategy to expand that. So we're getting there, but it's a challenge. And one thing I would add, simply by posting that shiny red button on our website, we have gotten about 2,000 new requests through that website. And about 96% of those people that signed up were new. They were new to Norwescap. They'd never participated before, 96%. So whatever information was getting out there, whether it was word of mouth or social media, it was reaching people that had never come to us and asked for help before. And to me, that statistic really kind of made it clear what the impact of COVID has been on our economy and on families and their incomes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I've talked to many different people who are responsible for food banks, and I've heard the numbers are astronomical, and just seeing the work that has to go in and the hours, everything has been impacted, everything, and people are scared, and there's a lot of, it's nice to be able to know that your organization is out there that they can lean on, and they're looking for something that they can hang on to, some sort of a resource that they want to talk to people too. They're so isolated. I'm sure some of your phone calls probably last a little longer than they might have in a non-COVID atmosphere, because people just want that engagement.
Yeah, and what I would say is, we right away had launched a fundraising campaign. I mean, within a week of when we had really shut everything down in the state, we launched a fundraising campaign, and we've had an unbelievable outpouring of support. I mean, when I tell you that, the receptionist at our front desk, who basically makes close to minimum wage or whatever it is, donated a huge portion of her stimulus check to us. I mean, I got emotional when I got the check. But we got $15 donations, $5 donations, $50,000 donations. People came out of the woodwork to support our work, and that allowed us to do some really creative stuff with folks that were struggling. And I can talk about that in a second. But particular shout out to companies like Mars Wrigley. They came to us and said, how can we help? Bank of America, Valley Bank, Fulton Bank, these folks came to us and said, what can we be doing to support your work? It was really remarkable to see the outpouring of support from individuals at the lowest end of the economic scale, at the highest end of the economic scale, and then corporate and other funders coming out of the woodwork to really make sure that we were helping as many people as possible.
Wow, I love the story about you said it was your receptionist, right? I mean, that's just,
it was unbelievable.
Somebody's $5 for them, that's could be 500, and we have to remember that. Sometimes we forget that, but and that gratitude, it's important to have gratitude for whatever the amount is that somebody's offering to give, because it can help change a life. So kudos to that person who did that for you. That's awesome. And to all those other sponsors, it's great when they're coming to you because they understand the work that you're providing in the community.
Yeah,
that's the major difference. If people are watching this or listening to this right now, once this gets streamed, and they want to help, where do you need the help and how do they help?
So we can use help in a bunch of places, and let me talk about our resiliency funds that we created when we launched that online campaign. We were really doing three things with those dollars. One, we were helping people with rental assistance, because as you know, folks who haven't been able to pay their rent have an eviction moratorium, but when that moratorium is over, they still got to pay all their back rent. That rent's not forgiven. So we have been supporting people both through government programs that have been available, and we've referred people to government programs through United Way funds that were available, as well as our own funds that we raised. And so we had a pool of money that allowed folks who might fall through the cracks of those other funds. We had a pool of dollars to support them and their families and allow them to stay in their homes. The second area was, and this was something that came out of a needs assessment that we did almost right away, which was automobile payments. People were going to lose their cars. They lost their job, or they lost their source of income, and now they're going to lose their car on top of that. So it's going to be impossible for them to find another job. And so, or their car broke down and they couldn't afford to fix it. So we set up a special pool of funds for that as well. And then lastly, we had something that was really sort of a fall through the cracks kind of fund, where, if your documentation status, if you didn't have documentation and you didn't qualify for some of these government programs, we had flexible dollars for you. Or you made too much money to qualify for some of these government programs, but now you're laid off. We had dollars that were free and flexible, and you could apply for that support. So that was something that we built from scratch, literally overnight. So the way people can help, the best thing is always to donate funding. If you can donate online, it's very simple. It takes you 5 minutes. Just to give you a sense, $1 can leverage 14 pounds of food for a family through our food bank program. So just to give you a sense of the power of your dollar, that's what we can get when you donate to us. But there's a lot more than that. We provide scholarships for people who are getting certifications to get employment. As I mentioned, we're helping people with car payments or rental payments. So the financial contributions that allow us to supplement government resources that we have for people who fall through the cracks. Like I said, if they make too much money or they're undocumented, we can support any human being that is facing any kind of struggle when you do that. Second, we obviously, right now, we're in the middle of a winter gear drive. Winter gear can get really expensive. A pair of gloves can cost you $40. And so we are collecting winter gear drive. We launched it during the Martin Luther King holiday, but we're going to be collecting it all winter and making sure it gets out to families in need. So any kind of winter gear. We always take food donations for the food bank. Diapers. Diapers are so expensive, and you use them once and you're done. So diapers and baby needs are always high on the list. So those kinds of in-kind contributions, whether it's COVID or not, are things that we always look for. And then I would say, lastly, volunteering. We have over 700 volunteers a year that participate in our programs, and they really make the wheels go round for us. They allow us to take those dollars and multiply our impact. So they're really important for our business model. And so volunteering, whether it's at the food bank and helping us clean and sort the produce or the products, or whether it's joining our AmeriCorps seniors program to call low-income seniors that may be shut in and don't have a lot of access to socialization. You can call them, and that's part of our program, or get them moving through exercise programs that we run. So there's all kinds of ways to get involved. You can join advisory committees we have to help with our financial empowerment programs. There's all kinds of ways to get involved. And again, it's as easy as going to the website and signing up, and somebody will get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking, tax season is coming, and you say you help people with taxes. So I'm assuming, you get CPAs or all levels of accountants and things like that to help out and support that. I'm assuming that's probably a very big project as well.
Yeah, and you don't even need to be a CPA.
Okay.
We train all kinds of folks to be able to do taxes. They have to go through a training program that the IRS has developed that we provide. But it's a great way to, I had one of our volunteers, actually Congressman Gottheimer was at this event. I had one of our volunteers telling us the story. He saved this one family $12,000.
Oh my gosh.
He was able to get them $12,000 in returns, in part because they hadn't filed their taxes in a couple of years, but in part because they didn't understand what they qualified for. And between the earned income tax credit and other rebates that you can ask for, you really do need someone who knows how to navigate that system. And so, like I said, we brought $3 million back in 2019 alone. So that's a powerful program that yields direct economic benefit for our footprint too. So.
No, and that's wonderful. And there's just so much good that you're doing, and kudos to you and your entire team to keep everything going. I don't think everybody always understands, what it takes to be a leader of an organization that has so many facets and truly is responsible for so many lives in so many ways, So I wanted to kind of shift a little bit and talk a little bit about, you're leading a team of 250, I think you said, right?
It's actually more. It's like 270.
270. So what is your leadership style? Where did you start to put it together from?
Yeah, well, I would say my leadership style is evolving, and it's evolving because the the last few organizations that I've been involved with and led were really startups or close to it. So I started New Jersey After 3 from scratch, and I had a couple of great mentors there who I really respected. But we started. I had a set of bylaws and $50,000 and the promise that the state would support us, and we made amazing things happen at our height, serving 15,000 kids a year across the state. But that was build a plane as you fly it. I mean, we were created in May. I had programs up and running in October. And so that was just, we were building the plane as we flew it. It was very entrepreneurial, very fast paced. And then I went to, the charter school, which was only 5 years old when I took over. And, running a charter school is an amazing challenge. And running any school is an amazing challenge. And I used to joke when I was at New Jersey After 3, the principals I work with, a principal in the urban school district makes more decisions in 5 minutes than a typical CEO makes in a month. It's rapid fire all the time. But we were building that charter school. Really, it was only 5 years old, and so we were still adding grades. We were still defining what our curriculum was and tweaking our curriculum. So again, it was build the plane as you fly it. Be very entrepreneurial and aggressive. And this challenge here at Norwescap is very different. It's a well-established, sustainable organization that has these well-established, sustainable revenue streams. It's sort of like finding a great old home that just needs, the kitchen has to be upgraded, the HVAC system has to be upgraded, but it's a beautiful home with beautiful old bones. And so that's a very different challenge. And so here we have these well-seasoned, amazing program directors that really know the ins and outs of their program. They've been here 5, 10, 20 years and supported those programs. So it's really about letting them be the drivers of change. You still got to set direction. We had some things we had to change. There's a culture shift we had to manage, and they're still managing. We had to move from being sort of an organization founded in the 60s to being a totally data-driven organization, which now I'm proud to say we really are. And all that's change management, but having those seasoned professionals that really know the ins and outs of their program is a different management challenge, and letting them getting out of their way is a very different management challenge for me, and it's taken some adjustment. And but I would say that my leadership style is always very participatory. I need lots of feedback, and not feedback just from formal channels, but feedback from all kinds of folks to make sure that we're making the right decisions for our participants and that we're supporting our employees in a way that is motivational and keeps them engaged and effective. So I would say very participatory, but it's really been a very different challenge than being in a charter school where 17 things happen before 8:30 in the morning.
It definitely sounds it. But it does also sound like your style, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a little bit of that servant leadership type of style, where you're cheering them on, guiding them, but you said participatory, which is really a big piece of what servant leadership is about, is being a participant in and having them be a participant in the decision-making process because they have expertise.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, a lot of the change that we've done over the last 2 years wouldn't have happened if I were the one micromanaging those change processes. They really bubbled up from some of our administrative staff here, particularly my chief program officer, who's just really creative and wonderful, but also getting input from a lot of our different folks. I mean, like at every level. I mean, I'm talking like administrative staff level up to program director level. And so we built these teams, these cross-programmatic teams, to get that input and develop our priorities. And when we developed our strategic plan, I mean, we had virtually every member of the staff participate in that. Not to mention, we had participants, many of whom didn't speak English at all, provide their input. And those ideas all bubble through the process and help us shape, what that strategic plan became, which was, sort of our guidance for the next 3 to 5 years. So it's really valuable. It takes more patience, and, having been the go-go entrepreneurial type and like, just get it done. It took some shifting for me, but it's been really effective, and I'm lucky. I feel like I really walked into an amazing opportunity to take this wonderful organization and continue to build on it.
There are nonprofits out there that unfortunately do not have the legacy of your organization, and not, maybe, it's not working like a well-oiled machine. And there's leaders, unfortunately, that are doing everything that they can to get themselves there. What advice do you have for those smaller not-for-profit leaders who are really, they're stuck in a place where there's fear, of course, there's goals, and the goals are always large. And there's always those stretch goals. And they need to keep their employees, because they need the programming to continue. Events, right? Events for many of them are gone or virtual, which is not the same. Do you have any advice that you'd give them from all that you've learned?
Well, one thing that I would say is one advantage that Norwescap has is that we do have these really, sort of stable revenue streams. So to the extent that you can, as a leader, try to target some really stable core revenue streams that are reliable, I think that's really important. And my experience in New Jersey up to 3 was we had one of those. And then after the financial collapse happened, with state support, and that state support just went down and down and eventually went away. And so I know what that's like, but I think finding some stable sources of revenue are really important. Number 2, I would say, be aggressive about asking for dollars, and not aggressive in an obnoxious sense. But if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't put pieces in place so that people can give to you. I mean, I'll just give you an example.
Please.
Norwescap didn't used to have a year-end appeal, right? We didn't ask people for money at the end of the year. And so my first year, we raised about $2,200 through a year-end appeal because I insisted on putting one into place. The next year, it was about $12,000. This year, it's going to be in the ballpark of like $60,000, right? So what you do is you put the pieces in place, and it may not happen right away. But when crisis hit, as I mentioned before, people had a place to go. They could donate on the website. They could give you money. They could see on the social media posts that we were delivering meals to children in need. And so people's hearts and wallets opened up. And so you got to put some of those pieces of infrastructure in place, and don't be shy. Ask for funds, because you know what? If you believe in what you're doing, and you clearly do, if you're in the nonprofit world, you're not in it for the big bucks.
No.
Then why wouldn't you be comfortable saying we need support? And every one of us, everyone who has that 501c3 designation needs that support. And so make sure you have all those pieces in place. And what I would say too is have a fundraising plan that includes special events, that includes, some of which have to be online now, that includes online, that includes direct mail, that includes grant writing. And I know a lot of one-stop shops have a hard time because it's one person, or maybe it's a part of a person. You know that yourself. But you do need to have multiple streams of revenue so that when one goes up, one comes down. Have a fundraising plan, put it in place. Be realistic but aggressive. Those are some things I would say. The other thing I would say is find great people. And I would argue we have one of the best nonprofit teams that I've ever seen. It's from our CFO to our chief program officer to our communications director to all our program directors. We have just these fantastic people that really know their business, and they get it done. And it was worth every penny of investment we make for those people. And so I would say find the right people, and they don't have to be paid. Sometimes they're just spectacular volunteers. They're partners. It could be any permutation of that, but finding great people to support you and advocate for you is really important.
Yeah, I could say because, starting, I worked for the national nonprofits, as I've said before on the podcast, and then starting and co-founding a not-for-profit. I asked a lot of questions from people who had been there before me. I think that is always helpful. Like someone like yourself who, maybe you haven't started not-for-profit, but you've worked for some and you have such great advice and great input and mentors. I'm a big, big believer in mentorship and really reaching out to others. And I think mentorship is really important. Is there a mentor that comes to your mind? And is there, you don't have to give the name, but like, is there a little bit of advice that they gave you that still sticks in your mind today?
Well, I have a couple that I'd mention, and each for different reasons. One is Bob Garashi, who is the founder and CEO of NJCDC in Patterson. What I learned from him is that he never doubted that he would be successful. And because he didn't, other people believed in him too. And so, watching his determination and his the way he went about making sure that his vision was going to come to fruition was inspirational and is inspirational. My first board chair at New Jersey After 3 was Ralph Izzo. And first of all, Ralph Izzo can take a set of financials, look at it for about 2 seconds, and understand exactly everything that's happening. But more importantly than his financial acumen is his ethics. He is just an ethical leader that I was impressed with and asked all the right questions, made sure that we were doing the right things. And so I took that lesson from him. And my second board chair at New Jersey After 3 was Doug Kennedy, now at PPAC Gladstone, and just his hard-charging, entrepreneurial, keep building, go out there and get it attitude was always inspirational. So I would say those 3 leaders were people that I really took a lot from that I worked with.
Oh, that's amazing. I wanted to get your opinion on something. So I was listening. Do you know Simon Sinek? I was listening to Simon Sinek, and he just put out something that said that instead of calling not-for-profits, they should be called for impact. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that. Linda Zippo from the Center for Nonprofits has riffed on that as well with, sort of the notion of we're the only sector that defines itself by what we're not.
Exactly, right? By the tax status. Exactly. And I feel like when you say for impact, it just has so much more meaning than not for profit, right? So I love to see that shift.
Right, and we're what, a $30 billion industry in the state. I mean, we have a huge impact. There's tens of that. Well, we're bigger than several. The nonprofit community is actually has more employees in the manufacturing community and a couple other communities combined. So it is an important factor in New Jersey's economy and in any economy. So I like the for impact moniker. I think that's great.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to start using it because I really feel like it has so much more meaning. I want to go back to the very beginning of our conversation since we're kind of drawing towards the end. And one of the things that I can't let go is that rock star picture that you had up from the NJ Biz 40 Under 40. So tell us, Mark Valli, the rock star?
No, I refer to myself as a failed rock star. Never actually made it anywhere, but played all throughout high school, college. After college, I had a band, and I was telling you before, I was listening to our songs the other day in the house while I was doing normal housework, and it was like, hey, these songs are really good. You can sing along with them, but it's a passion of mine. I love picking up the guitar and playing along with the radio or Alexa. And there's nothing like creating music with a group of people. That moment when you're all just sort of clicking and moving together. Really, there's some management lessons there, right? Because the drummer wants to go here, the bassist wants to go there, the singer's thinking this. But when you take those elements and you put it together, you're creating a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. I forget how that statement always goes. But I love it. It's a passion. Again, I think that there were real management And part of the failure in the band, by the way, is we couldn't keep it together. So after about 3 years, Men in Crisis, we were called.
Oh, I love Men in Crisis.
Yeah.
So great.
Our logo was literally Lee Harvey Oswald being shot.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
That's the definition of crisis, right?
Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, keeping personalities together, keeping egos in check, that's management. Working together, pulling different assets together for a common goal, that's management. And so I think that rock and roll, as with sports and as with art, there's a lot of lessons you can learn from that in terms of management.
Right. I think, we talked about the fact that you play music, right, at the end of your some of your meetings and how that makes people feel. I loved that.
It totally changes everything. We do. It's now monthly, but during the crisis, like at the height of the crisis, we were doing weekly all staff communication. So all 270 plus people would be on the Zoom call, and we would start the meeting with music while we were waiting for everybody to log in, and we would end the meeting with music. And the music usually had a theme. There was usually like a message we were sending, but it didn't matter because people were dancing. They're dancing in their little Zoom cell, and it just changed. It changed the feel of those meetings. Instead of dreading, like, oh my God, we got another all-staff Zoom call. People were psyched, and they'd cheer in the chat, and they'd say woohoo, and hey, we love Norwescap, and it just changed the dynamic. And actually, even before COVID, before we were doing that on Zoom, when we would do our annual all-staff meeting, we would play lunch again. We would play music at the beginning during the gathering and at breakfast time, and then again at lunch, and then again at the end of the meeting. And again, it got people out of their seats. They would be dancing. I like walk in at lunchtime. I'm like, all right, is this a rave, or are we at a business meeting here? But it brings people closer together. It lightens it. It brings out our humanity. So that's why I'm passionate about music, and I know you are too. Oh,
absolutely. I feel like it's the language everybody understands. Right? Music is totally. It doesn't matter what language it's in. You can still get up and dance to it and feel connected to it. Which even if you don't understand the words, which is so awesome. And right. So, as I had said to you, I lead the NJBIA's not-for-profit council, and we play music as people arrive too, because that silence in the beginning just feels uncomfortable. But you put the music on, and people, they're dressed in suits from the waist up, but they're dancing in their chairs, and it's so much fun to see that happen. And when they put in the chat box, oh, I love this song, and it really is it's a healer too. Music is totally a healer. And I just want to go back. Never a failure, Mark. And I know you know this. Never a failure. It's always an opportunity to learn. And it sounds like it definitely was a learning experience to be part of that band. And look at where you are now. You're leading an organization of 270 instead of being a part of a band of 5 or 6 or whatever the size was.
Right.
I ask every one of my guests this question as our last question, and I feel like it's an important one. It's, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really good question. And I think one of them is that, and I remember telling the fellow we hired for the charter school who followed me, is your budget. Own your budget. Understand the nooks and crannies of it, understand where there could be efficiencies, understand how it works. Our budget is enormously complex. I mean, we literally have, I think it's, 56 different contracts with a variety of entities. We counted them up. Those contracts had a total of 18 different fiscal years. And check me if I'm wrong, but there's only 12 months in a year. So how do you have 18 different fiscal years? But some of them are 18 months, some of them are 24 months. And so we have this enormously complex budget. But if you own your budget, you sort of understand what the limitations and the capacity of your organization are and where you can go and where you might have to draw back. So I think that's really important. And I think investing in your people is another thing that I've learned over time, that You can try to save costs by having, your salary line be lower. But I think when you invest in people, when you treat them with respect and give them the opportunity to participate, they'll stick with you. I remember doing research when we were in collective bargaining at my charter school, and finding out that feeling good about your organization is more important than your salary. And in all the surveys and all the research, I mean, obviously salary is important. And like I say, you do want to pay people commensurate with their experience and their output. But at the same time, you want to make sure that they're feeling part of your organization. So I think that's something I've learned. And how do you get their input? How do you make them feel like they're making the decisions? And then when you have successes, how do you celebrate them? And so we do a lot of that. We do a lot of celebration. We created something called, well, first of all, we do longevity because Norwescap, there's been some people here for 40 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
But we have our partner awards where people nominate each other. So it's not even the supervisor that's nominating them. They nominate each other, and then we announce it on our monthly calls. And they get the opportunity peer-to-peer to say, thank you for going over and above. So that's just one example. There's a million examples of ways to celebrate your employee's success, but I think those kinds of lessons are important for you.
No, then that's awesome. And it's so true, because a lot of times if you don't spend the time with the staff to really understand the mission and to actually feel like they are embedded in it and that they actually make a difference in the daily work that they do, and then it's just a job. And nonprofit, I'm not gonna say it's not the same in for-profit, just being in nonprofit longer myself. In nonprofit, I feel like that is so true, that you are the mission. People connect with you, even though we always say, no, the mission is separate from us individually. We represent the organization as we go out and talk about it. So, right, people want to feel connected to you, and if you're not connected to the mission, they won't be either.
Yeah. Every one of us is a representative of our organization. And I used to say, have those conversations over the Thanksgiving dinner table, and does your Aunt Millie understand what you're talking about? Or are you talking in a bunch of acronyms that Aunt Millie doesn't get? So that's really true. We are all our own agencies.
That's a great way I like that. Talk to Aunt Millie about your mission. I love that idea, and see if they connect and see if family connects. That's fabulous. Mark, I definitely want to have you back on, in the future to get an update about you and Norwescap, and if you've started playing anywhere with your guitar instead of just playing along to the.
Those days, unfortunately, those days are gone.
But it's so awesome. I'm so glad you shared that with us. Thank you so much for sharing that. Any last thoughts before we end the?
Well, I'll give you a shameless plug, but this is particularly targeted at small shops, which is. Amy Eisenstein is a New Jersey person. She was actually a former intern of mine many moons ago. Has published several books on how to fundraise for the small shops. So I would Google Amy Eisenstein, and I think her business was TriPoint Consulting. She's fantastic. She travels around the world now, talking to nonprofit organizations about how to raise money when you're a small shop. And so I think that's really valuable for folks, because a lot of you go in the Chronicle of Philanthropy webinars, and they have these, a university's got like 500 people raising money. Like, that's not most nonprofits' experience. So I would look up Amy's work and some of her, her social media posts, and it's very helpful. So I would look her up.
And thank you. That's a great resource, for everyone to know about. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. Mark, I want to thank you for your time today. I could have probably sat another hour talking to you, because you have such good, we didn't even get to some of the other things that you've done in your previous work. And I hope we get to do that again in the future, and we get to sit down and chat again. I just want to say what I always say at the end of every podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So take that first step for what you want to do today, so that you can make a difference and that you can feel fulfilled. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next week on the podcast and YouTube channel. Bye, everybody.